Welcome back in, everybody. It's a fresh edition of the First and Orange podcast. Parker Gabriel here, Ryan McFadden there, Troy Renck in the house, the venerable Denver Post columnist. Fully loaded this week, coming off the bye. It was a quiet one. I guess there was some, a couple transactions that waived Josh Reynolds after the Monday night win, which was a wild one against Cleveland, and all of that, guys. It sort of now seems like a month ago, even though it just was a couple weeks ago. The stretch run's here. It's a big one on Sunday against Indianapolis. The stakes, for a regular season game, unless it was just a straight up play-in game, really couldn't be higher. And Ryan, I thought it was interesting that Sean Payton yesterday, he sort of said this. He didn't really say it, but then players said it in the locker room on Wednesday afternoon, that Sean talk to them about where they are, about how much it means, about how much the odds are going to swing one way or another, depending on what happens with this game in Indianapolis. Did it surprise you at all? I guess, what did you just make of? I mean, they're pretty straightforward about knowing, what's at stake here on Sunday against Indy.
It doesn't surprise me at all, because you have to know that. When you look at the schedule ahead, it's like you have to take care of business against Indy on Sunday. This is another one of those winnable games that you should be able to handle on your home turf before you play the Chargers in primetime Thursday Night Football. And after that, you're on the road against Cincinnati. Even though Cincinnati hasn't been the best team, they have struggled, but that is still a dangerous team to play on the road with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver quarterback duo in the league. So you want to take care of this, to at least take some of the pressure off your back, because then it's like, if you lose on Sunday, then that pressure keeps mounting, and the competition gets tougher and tougher. So it's important to take care of business here, especially when you look at what the teams are also competing for postseason, who they have to play afterwards. So yeah, this is important. It's important for you guys to know that you got to this point. I know a lot of people who've covered this team probably didn't expect them to be at 8-5 here at this point in the season. But here they are, and it's good that Sean Payton, and it's good that the players know this is what at stake is. This is what is at stake, because you're already here. A lot of people didn't expect you to be here, and for some, maybe if you didn't make the playoffs, it's still winning 8 games with this type of roster is pretty impressive. But you're right here. You might as well just go forward and take advantage of this moment.
Troy, sometimes the winnable game thing is like a death sentence. A lot of times winnable games get talked about in the context of games that the team did not actually win. But this group, especially, I don't know that a lot of people expected them to go to Seattle and win, week 1. And if you look at their losses otherwise, Pittsburgh, playoff team, Chargers, playoff team, those games are at home. Obviously, you'd like to have those, but those are also in the first 6 weeks of the season. And then the 2 road losses at Baltimore and Kansas City, for the most part, this has been – I think part of it maybe is that this is a team that Sean Payton seems to trust in terms of their ability to, handle expectations. And it's a team that by and large has taken care of the games that they're sort of quote unquote, expected to take care of so far this year.
Yeah, it's a sign of his leadership, the leadership in the locker room, that you handle your business.
Yeah.
If you're a good team, you beat bad teams. They've accomplished that this year. The Colts, let's be honest, they're not a good team. They're not. And Richardson's not a good quarterback right now. He might be. Right. He's not right now. Their defense, they've been calling for the defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, be fired for weeks. So, they're not a good team, and you play them at home. And if you're a good team, you beat a team like this. And last year, Parker, to your point, we saw against the Patriots, with everything on the line, they lost.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't handle success. The leadership wasn't right. The pieces weren't right, whether you blame. And Russell played well enough for them to win it, especially at the end of that game. Sean didn't coach well that game. The pieces didn't fit. Now you can tell, to your point of trust, he believes in this locker room. It's more of his guys. And it's just coaching. It doesn't mean the other guys weren't good guys. It's all about fit. And he's got more of his guys. And some of the guys that are holdovers have bought in differently. And I would, Cortland Sutton, the way he leads this year, totally different. the way he is at the microphone, the way he is in the locker room. I mean, you've seen other veterans take a different posture, and having Bo Nix as a young quarterback leader kind of is that secret sauce has helped. But listen, if you lose to the Colts, and then to Ryan's point, they turn around and play like Titans, Jaguars, and Giants, you're in trouble. Because then if you lose another game, they're going to beat you on the tiebreaker. And that would be devastating, given everything they've done this season. And I picked them to win 6 games, so I'm not going to kill them for it. But at 8-5 with a 3-game winning streak with the Colts at home, this is a game you have to win. This is the kind of game that you put your flag down and say, see, the Broncos are back.
Yeah, maybe I've said it on the podcast, but I sort of liken it to, like, if you're like a 13 seed in the NCAA tournament and you're winning 12 minutes into the game, people kind of take notice of like, oh, that's nice, cool. It's always like this. March Madness, there's always some surprises. But if you're leading by 5 at the under 4, it turns from like a nice story to that team will be crushed if they don't win. You're like, once you get in striking range, it's like you just got to do it. And that's where they are now. They're coming into the last quarter of the season. They're 2 games clear, but like you said, Troy, I mean, I think right away after the Cleveland game, I didn't quite, you see they're 2 games up in the loss column and all that, but all of the analytics and all the numbers and all that, like, it is clear that, whoever wins this game is in the driver's seat for the last spot. And that's because of the tiebreaker, obviously. And then, like, Ryan and I were talking about this right before we started, Miami plays at Cleveland. They're 6-7, just like Indianapolis. And if they win at Houston this weekend, they've got the kind of schedule that they could run through too. Now, obviously it's really hard. It's always hard to win 4 in a row in the NFL. It's hard to win 8 of 9 or whatever it would be for them to close. But you've got 2 teams that have much softer schedules than Denver has down the stretch that have to close ground but are capable of closing ground. And the Colts are capable of closing ground unless Denver wins this weekend. So, they can sort of deal almost a knockout blow to Indy this weekend. Then you're only worried about the Dolphins, running the table and getting 10 wins as well. And even then, like, you're at 9, you've got a chance to get to 11, solidify your spot anyway. So it's all on the table for the Broncos this week. Troy, I want to come back to you. You wrote about Bo and the leadership thing yesterday. It's pretty interesting. Like, I guess it's like we've been writing about this and talking about this all year, but coming off the bye week and setting up the stretch run and getting a little bit of a reset, there really is a palpable sense in the locker room of the guys just have full and utter trust in Bo Nix that he's going to play the last 4 weeks like he's played the last, let's say, 10.
Yeah, it's a remarkable story with me. The thing about Bo Nix that I come back to is he's comfortable in his own skin. And he's 24, he's a 24-year-old mature. But when I was watching old interviews with him way back after he got drafted and in different things, and he talked about his pregame routine and things he did, and it occurred to me, I've never heard him curse, guys. I've never heard him, curse. And you don't have to. I curse a lot, and I certainly have. I'm as guilty as anyone. Growing up in a sports environment, my dad was my coach. I cursed, and I've gotten better at it as an age. But I talk to players about it because what we could see externally as perhaps a weakness, they see as a strength that shows his discipline and his conviction and how he lives his life. And he's threading a fine line, threading a needle here, because I got pushback from my column. I knew I would. Well, Russ didn't really curse. I don't know if he cursed. I think I heard him curse a few times. It doesn't matter. But how's it different? Well, the difference is, fair or not, Bo comes off as authentic. Russ's problem is he fought the reality of he didn't feel authentic at times. And I think he was, but it came across as corny. It came across as not authentic, and it came across as delusional at times. Where Bo has found his space so far, when I asked about leadership yesterday, I don't talk much. These guys don't need that. They need me to perform, need me to show confidence, need me to produce, like show them, don't tell them. I'm not going to talk. He's not that guy. So the not cursing thing I found interesting because it shows his discipline and conviction in his life and how comfortable he is and who he is. And he totally gets McGlinchey was telling me, he totally gets what it means to be the Broncos quarterback, and that he has to play well for them to play well. And that's what matters. Not all the other peripheral stuff. He knows he needs to play well for his guys in there. But Mims told me, Parker and Ryan, what he found unique about Bo, and this goes back to that Raiders game where he had the confrontation with Sean. He's like, early in training camp, or it might have been even the spring, he was like, we would call a play and Bo would run his own thing because he's so confident in who he is. And that's what led to that confrontation with Sean on the sideline. He will stand up for himself. Even as he's been almost deferential to the leaders this year, the veterans, he has that backbone to stand up for himself. So I think it's just unique. He's got to continue to play well. You can't talk about it, be about it. But their trust in him is remarkable in how young, given how he played the first few weeks of the season. If you would have told me, man, the final stretch of the year, one of the reasons this team believes they're going to win is because of Bo Nix, I would have been, man, are you sure? And it's unquestioned when you're in the locker room. They believe in this guy. And in pro sports, it's Darwinism. They don't care who you are. If you can win, they believe in you. It doesn't matter where you got drafted, what school you went to, your signing bonus, the car you drive. If you stink on Sunday, guys don't trust you. Yep. They trust Bo. And that's what's fascinating. And I think it's only going to grow as he gets better and the talent around him, frankly, gets better.
I think there's actually a little bit of – I think that there's some parallel to not Denver era Russell Wilson, but like rookie Russ, because rookie Russ was ready to play right away. And it was a much different kind of locker room. It was one dominated by the Legion of Boom and all that, but he wasn't the face of the franchise right away. I mean, but you are, if you're the starting quarterback as a rookie, the same way Bo is, but he didn't have to be the voice of the franchise publicly. And Bo, I think one of the surprises of this season, Ryan, for the Broncos is the way Bo Nix has played, obviously. But I think another element of it is that you didn't know if he was going to have, I don't know about the luxury, but the ability to fold in the way he has, do his thing, have this role where he didn't have to be the vocal leader. Like through training camp and then the first couple weeks of the season, a lot of what we talked about is like, are they putting way too much on Bo Nix? And I think as the season's gone along, maybe one of the things we've seen is as they've been able to allow Bo to do more offensively, but not have to be the voice of the locker room to carry the whole thing on his shoulders more than that comes with the territory. And that's a testament, I think, to the rest of the locker room. And I'm not sure we knew that was going to be the case this year either.
Oh no, we didn't. It's a different vibe this year where it's like everyone is like sings together. Everyone believes in one another. And I think that's been the underrated aspect. We get there's so much talk about Bo Nix's growth as a quarterback. We've seen the growth, the defense just play lights out throughout the course of the season. Nick Benito emerging as a potential all-pro candidate. But when you're in that locker room, whether it's a win or a loss, it's like there's just the chemistry is a lot different compared to a year ago. There's a different kind of belief. And it's crazy. Like I sensed it more after that Kansas City game when they lost. It was just something there where it's like, oh, this is not going to turn where a lot of teams were you might see in the past where teams that can just derail your season. Like you're right there on the cusp of being the Super Bowl champs, and it just falls apart in the final seconds. And right then and there, a team can just, go off and just watch their season just collapse after that.
Well, it happened to Chicago with a rookie quarterback after the Hail Mary. I mean, like legitimately, they suffered a devastating loss and it went off a cliff like immediately following that.
Right. But when you were in that locker room in Kansas City, you didn't sense that. You just sensed the team like, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
We know that we can be one of the best teams in the league. And no matter we only have one first round pick on defense, and we have a 26-year-old rookie as our wide receiver too. We're going to figure out a way. We're going to go in there and we're going to think we're the best team. We're better than any team we go against. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences of this team Also, it's just the belief in one another, and that's just not in the quarterback. It's just for everybody in the room, offense, defense, special team. There's a certain type of chemistry and belief that's just flowing through this team that I think is helping them in these games. And you even saw it in Cleveland when they was in that back and forth against the Browns, and still figure out a way to win that game despite Bo Nix throwing 2 interceptions. They still figured out a way to pull that game off. And I think that right there could be the key and to get it into the postseason.
Yeah, they hadn't won. They've won games in several different ways this year. They hadn't won the sort of like real shootout until that Monday night game against Cleveland. So that's Mike McGlinchey said that to me yesterday too. He's like, that in the locker room, like that's another that was a game where it was like, okay, you check another box. Like, we don't want to have to win that way. He doesn't think they're going to have to win that way all that often with the way their defense is played, but they're capable of doing it against an offense that really, has put up pretty good numbers in recent weeks in Cleveland. So it's obviously a critical, game Sunday with huge stakes. I want to, just because it's such a quick turnaround now to the first Thursday night flex in NFL history. All of us scrambled to change our travel arrangements to Los Angeles when this game got flexed a couple weeks ago. But it's sort of amazing. Like, you start training camp and the guys, I talk to players. So it's basically, they're like, yeah, our bye week's week 14. But when you think about training camp, like, we're basically on 20 straight weeks before we get to our bye week. And now you come out of it, and all of a sudden it's like, in large part, like, Denver's playoff fate really could be sealed in a 5-day span, playing Indy on Sunday and then at the Chargers on Thursday. There are scenarios where you win both and you clinch a spot, Troy. And if you lose both, your odds of making it are probably like single digits ish. And then you're worried about everybody else. Hopefully Miami loses. Hopefully Indy loses. Hopefully the Chiefs don't need the week 18 game. Like, it is amazing that the season largely is in many ways going to come down to this 5-day span that's coming up, Colts and then the Chargers on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's just, and in the past, to Ryan's point, when the Broncos lost a game like the Chiefs, I remember writing that loss is the reason they're going to win and go to the playoffs, because I saw the investment was so different. Because in the previous years, when they lost a game like that, it was definitely, here we go again. It was just that gravitational pull of suck. We're terrible. This is who we are. That's why it's so difficult at times to change a culture. And how has Payton done it? His coaching is part of it, the quarterback, but he's got more of his guys. It's clear, whether it's Roach, whether it's, the Troutmans having more of a – pick a guy. He's got more of his type of guys. Riley Moss emerging. But when you look at this 5-game stretch, that's why this Colts game is so big. You got to win that. Beating the Chargers in LA is not going to be easy. The Chargers in so many ways are the Broncos. They're not great offensively. They're good. But they're not afraid to beat you in a rock fight 17-13. Like, that Chiefs game is their blueprint. And I thought they were going to beat the Chiefs 3 weeks ago. And then when Dobbins got hurt, I'm like, no way they could beat the Chiefs. They probably should have beaten the Chiefs. And that's going to be the challenge for the Broncos, is we talk about it winning in different ways. Can you beat a good team, like, when they do what they want to do and you do what you want to do? Can you win that game? And that's like that next level. If you say, okay, they're going to beat the Colts. If you beat the Chargers, and I think you and I have talked about this, and maybe Ryan and I, why settle for a 7? Guys,
right. Yeah, totally.
The ideal matchup. We're in the media business. We know we want a 6 seed. We want them to play at Pittsburgh against Russell Wilson. I mean, and there's no reason to settle for a 7 when you got a 6 out there, and a 6 realistic if you beat the Chargers.
Yeah.
Suddenly, and especially if the Chiefs are resting guys in week 17. You go 3-1 these last few games, you get to 11 wins. You're a 6 seed. Sign me up for Broncos at Pittsburgh, because I'm not saying they would win. That's a winnable game. As we sit here today, I don't see at Buffalo in January as much of a winnable game. Now, you have a puncher's chance, of course.
Yeah.
But they played the Steelers. That's a game you can win, and that's just it's a winnable game. And so I'm with you. These next 5 days, not only can it decide their fate, but it can change everything.
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah.
Like, you can go win a playoff game And now, like, hey, you're in. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because we can't. We're not used to this foreign feeling of hope and excitement. But I'm rooting for win those two and sign me up for Pittsburgh, baby.
One way or another, Broncos Steelers in the wild card round would just be terrific. Especially because Russell was still dealing with the calf injury week 2, didn't play, all that. Like it just would be. It would be perfect theater. Ryan, a couple game specific things before we get to predictions. Riley Moss was back at practice on Wednesday. We're recording this Thursday morning before practice, but he did not. He was listed as a did not participate. He stretched and then went right into the field house to do conditioning only work. Levi Wallace, to his credit, took the brunt of the Monday night performance in the locker room yesterday, said it was the worst game he'd ever played. If Riley Moss doesn't play Sunday, which from here, it doesn't look like he's going to. We'll see what happens the next couple of days at practice. But if he misses another week or two, are you putting Levi Wallace back out there, or are you rolling with Chris Abrams-Draine, the rookie, against a Colts offense that, although it hasn't been good or necessarily efficient, is capable of making big plays, and it really has made a living this year in the sort of boomer bust fashion?
Yeah, that's tough. Because before the Browns game, he was he wasn't. Levi Wallace not setting the world on fire, but he was. In the time they needed him out there, he was solid. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't be surprised they go back to him. You might see a little bit more like they rotate between him and Abrams-Draine, because in the few snaps we saw from Abrams-Draine, he was solid. Yep. But then again, this is you're talking about a Sean Payton team, and I wouldn't be, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they do say, you know what, let's put Chris Abrams-Draine out there and see what he can do. But no, I think when you look at that game, if Riley Moss is not able to go, I won't be surprised you see sort of like a rotation between him and Abrams-Draine. I think at this point, Abrams-Draine deserved it. This is one guy, like he was probably one of my favorite picks out of Denver's draft class, and he had a really solid training camp and a preseason. So I would like to see him out there and getting some more reps at outside corner.
Troy, it was pretty sweet after the game. Chris Abrams-Draine, and obviously like big win, emotion and all that, but Chris Abrams-Draine got thrown in there with 2 minutes and 54 seconds left and the game on the line. And his first rep was man coverage against Jerry Jeudy, who was on an epic heater. And after the game, Abrams-Draine said, yeah, listen, when you get thrown in a game like that, it's no time to be scared. That's what he said. It's no time to be scared. You don't back down from anybody. You just play. And that's a pretty impressive way for a rookie to handle that scenario. And I think I have two thoughts. There's that, and then there's also like it is wild. If in July you would have told me that we were talking about like the cascading effect of Riley Moss missing time, it just would have been hard to see. He played well in camp and all that, but it goes to show you how good he's played, that when he goes out, you're sitting there thinking like, okay, now what do they do?
Right. I mean, I thought he'd be functional this season. That was my prediction. He'd be a functional cornerback and allow Pat Surtain to be more involved because Riley would be just serviceable. I didn't have any expectation he would put himself like in a Pro Bowl conversation or one of the better corners, certainly in the AFC this year. Wallace had a bad game, and I give him credit for talking about it. I always prefer a guy talk about it in the locker room after the game, especially a bye week and 10 days later. But I appreciate the fact he spoke about it. He had a bad day. He had a really bad day. And corner's the kind of position, it's like catcher in baseball, or, like you can't, when you have a bad day there, it's like the worst day of your life because the ball is finding you every play and you just can't get out of it. And to your point about Draine, and I remember Ryan writing about Draine and, they loving him coming out of the draft and just why'd this guy drop? And so I think they found something there. And to have that kind of confidence in that moment, because you've just watched the guy you replaced get booed off the field. Yeah. And I can only imagine what those conversations on the sidelines were like, where they're screaming at Wallace, like, what is going on? So for Draine to come in, I think he needs to start. It would be a disappointing thing, frankly, if Wallace starts. I think it sends the wrong message. Now, again, I'm not at practice. Wallace rebounded. The scheme this week fits him better. There is some of that you defer to coaches, but the optics would tell you Draine needs to start. And based on how he finished, based on how Wallace played, And they need Drain for what, Ryan? 2 more games, this one and the next one, and we're thinking Riley should be back for Cincinnati. I mean, that's why I think if you're going to have to trust Chris Abrams' Drain at Cincinnati, you're getting some reps now.
Yeah.
They're going to throw the ball. Cincinnati is going to throw the ball. That's going to look like Jameis Winston, throwing with way more accuracy and precision. So I like Drain playing, but I think if in fairness, he's earned the right. Now, if he goes out and struggles, maybe make a move. But I think you have to play Drain because it sends the wrong message if he doesn't play. It doesn't start.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Otherwise, obviously, Denver coming off the bye week pretty healthy. Brandon Jones limited yesterday, but that was the extent of the injury report. Those 2 guys. Indy getting healthy too. Looks like they'll have their trio of wide receivers available. First time in a couple weeks on that with Pittman and Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. So it's sort of an underrated trio. Those 3 and Anthony Richardson haven't played together all that much this year because Richardson missed a couple games. Then obviously he got benched, put back in the lineup. 2 of their receivers have missed time. They'll have their full complement in terms of their offensive weaponry. And then obviously Jonathan Taylor's a really good back. So you talk to guys in the locker room, they say they haven't looked like a good offense, but they are. That's the tack the Broncos have taken. Obviously it's not one you can take lightly. It'll be interesting for sure. Let's get predictions and get out of here. Ryan, let's start with you. What do you got? Biggest game of the season so far?
I got Broncos winning 27-17. I think the defense is going to bounce back in a big way. I think the key we saw last time against Cleveland, they were able to use turnovers to win games. I think it's going to be the same way in this game as well. I think they're going to have to be mindful of Anthony Richardson trying to take some shots down the field. He has the arm talent, even though his pass numbers aren't great, but he does have the arm strength to throw the ball down the field. And I think they're going to have to be mindful of that, especially coming off a game where they gave up a handful of explosive plays. So I wouldn't be surprised you try to see the Colts test the Broncos on that end. But I think they're going to be able to force a couple of, maybe 1 or 2 turnovers, and that would be able to swing things in their favor. And then I think the Colts defense hasn't been good at all. So I think when you look at that, and I think Bo Nix is going to have a solid game, and I won't be surprised if you see a solid production from the run game. And the one thing we noticed from this team, they seem to they play well against teams who struggle against the run. Denver's rushing attack hasn't been perfect, but whenever they go against a team who struggles against containing the run, they seem to figure out ways to, exploit that weakness. And that's where I feel like that's why this matchup is in their favor. So I got the Broncos winning 27-17 at home. We've seen this team, like we talked about earlier on this podcast, like winning games that they need to win and stepping up to the moment. And so far, we've seen this team do that this year. I think that continues on Sunday.
Troy.
Yeah, to Ryan's point, the Colts allow 147 yards, I'm looking at, on the ground, 31st in the league. This is an opportunity to ground and pound a little bit. I've pleaded for Estime. I've given up on that. Hashtag hot hand. Whatever they're going to do, they got to run the ball, study the game that way. And defensively, Ryan hit on it that you just, like, Vance Joseph prides himself on not allowing splash plays, and it was like one cannonball after another.
Yeah.
So eliminate the splash plays. There might be one. Be sound against the rush. I mean, Taylor's going to get his yards, but you hold him to 65, 70 yards. You're going to win. You're going to win if you just follow the script that they win with, which is don't turn the ball over, be good defensive. You don't have to be great, and get a takeaway or two. When they win the takeaway battle and they're able to run some, control the clock, this is, like Ryan said, this is the kind of game from a statistical standpoint that matches up well for the Broncos. And so I believe they're gonna cover. I see Broncos 25-20. There's gonna be some nervous energy. There's gonna be some plays you're like, oh no. But I just think in the end, the stakes, the crowd, everything that we normally would work against the Broncos team the last 8 years, Parker, is gonna work for them. They're gonna feel the momentum. They're gonna feel everything and say, this is our chance to put ourselves in perfect position to not only qualify for the playoffs, but obviously make a run at a 6th seed. So I got Broncos 25, Colts 20.
Good teams win, great teams cover. Yeah, listen, it's sort of strange. It's a team that you just sort of come to trust. And that's if you're a reporter, sometimes you're like, man, it's not, I haven't witnessed this before. If you're a fan, it can be agonizing of like just about the time you settle in and say, okay, I really believe in this team. Sometimes that's when bad things happen. There's part of me that just can't shake like Alec Pierce, who has 29 catches on the year, but is averaging 22.5 per catch, like running free early in the fourth quarter down the field or something like that visual. But this defense has risen to the occasion all year. And when they've played bad, they've come back and played really well. And I just, there's too much that suggests that this team knows exactly what it needs to do, that it's capable of doing what it needs to do. And I think they will. And so I'm right with you guys. 27-20, same kind of game. Might feel hairy at some point, but that's real football in December. So bring it on. 2 games in 5 days. We will be there to cover it all. You can find all the latest coverage, great stuff, just even like yesterday from Ryan and from Troy. denverpost.com/Broncos, all the latest. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys on the short week next week.